one question that somebody has asked is for me to talk about what's commonly known as spiritual bypassing. So I'm going to kind of come back to that concept in just a sec. But first I want to share that there's something really amazing happening in the world. You know, people take this for granted and they think it's just another day and just another year. Things are ramping up fast. But that's the thing. Everything's accelerating. And even if you say, well, no, you know, you can't really speed up time. Time, the planetary movements, it measures time. So we're not down to having only, 22 hours in a day, or, you can't measure it like that. Because what's happening is the speed of time is happening where time itself still seems to be calculated with the gears moving. But what's speeding up is our consciousness. So we're living multiple minutes in 1 minute, multiple hours in 1 hour, multiple days in 1 day, and so on. It's not something we can measure yet, per se, nor should you need to, because you can feel it. It's psychological. It's something spiritual and psychological. And even with the idea, inspirations. When we tune into God, we start to feel inspiration, like, wow, something's happening. And some people go, I wish that were me. I'm not having inspirations. I'm having crashes. Well, that's okay too, because crashes happen just before inspirations. If you have the eyes to see, the ears to hear. You can also just crash. That's what humans do typically. Things aren't going well. Okay, now I'll just be bummed. Well, mystics understand the cycles. Things are collapsing. I'm going to go inside and help them collapse. I'm going to get on board, participate in the collapse of the false world, and I'll be ready when the next cycle comes around, because it's going to launch me. And it does. And so the world is having its own dark night of the soul, and it'll cycle deeper and deeper into that. But at the same time, we're allowed to live and thrive even when cycles look like they're spinning downwards. Because there's many cycles within a big cycle. So we're sort of on a high and then a little bit of a low, but the big wheel is turning. And that big wheel, in terms of the universe and our planet and our evolution, that big wheel is overall in a dark time, even though we have little mini times of renaissances. And in some ways that's happening now for many of us. But the big wheel is turning, and it's going to keep moving in that direction for a little while longer, where the big stuff, people's karma, individual karma, national karma, all that still has to be purged. And if you have any doubts, it's like what Jesus called in A Course in Miracles. A lot of people don't realize it. He referred to as the great cosmic speed up. So this is happening. It's not just one teacher or an opinion. Something very magnificent is happening. And I've seen churches say to me, how do we do more like you guys are doing at Unity of Sedona? And I haven't told people this before. Anybody, I said this to. But churches, not this part, but the churches will ask me, Michael, what should we do? How do we do that? Or can you advise us? We're collapsing. Can you help us bounce back? Typically, what I do, and I've not said this part, like I said, but is I usually will get very clear about what they need to do, and then I'll tell them, knowing it's the very thing they won't do. Then why bother telling them? Just to bum them out? Make them feel bad about not doing it? It's the same reason Jesus said to a rich man, tell me, I'll do anything to become close to God. Excellent. Jesus is like, wow, you're impressive. You're amazing. We should all be like you. There's only one thing you need to do. Get rid of all your stuff that you're attached to. And the guy's like, oh, I'm not going to do that. Jesus is like, I know you're not going to do that. That's why I brought it up. So there are churches that over the last several years would say, would you be our minister? Sure. Even though I'm here, I'd say, yeah, I would consider that. As long as you do this, this, this. We'll do it. A couple months later, nothing. Even with my saying, sure, I'll do it, it's not that I actually will, although I would probably find a way to do it. It's because I know they're not going to do it. People do not like counselors that would mirror that sort of thing. They only want to be coached along in their ego kind of a fashion. Tell us what we want to hear. So instead I'm going to say, actually, you need to do this, this, and this. And then absolutely, I'll be here. And it's amazing what happens. Because they have to disappear because of the guilt and shame of not being able to pull it off. And I'm like, still here? Still doing my thing. But it's the same with people. They don't want to hear the very things that would most help them clear the past of all their leaks and issues and anchors that keep you stuck and launch into that new life. So we don't just get what we want from our ego. We have to get rid of those pieces, and then Spirit takes us. Not even by our own, manufacturing or contriving. Spirit takes us. So, this is something that's happening, and it's part of this cosmic speed up. So imagine if I'm saying this and it made any sense to you, what if God also is saying the same thing to all of us? Hey, God, we would like this and we would like that. How do we not know that God, the Spirit of love, is also saying, I would love to help you all in your prayers and you're wanting to launch into a new life. You want to have this happen, you want to have that, you want a new job, you want this and that, whatever. Haven't we figured out yet that for us to receive, we have to first let go of what is it that is in the way of what we want to receive in the first place? And it's the same thing. So planet Earth is shifting so rapidly, it's almost scary. And if people realized what's happening, they would definitely be scared. Because the world, as we know it, is disappearing. And when we ask for transformation of the world, all of us have a little bit of a tendency to say, here we are, beloved Father, Mother, God. Drumming, gongs. Bring the changes, heaven on earth. We're ready for transformation, but in the back of our minds, we're going, you know what we mean. We mean not too much. Outside, oh, Mani Padme, bring us changes, but not too fast. We have our little agendas. And I've seen churches in the sickest behaviors with their agendas. The church folks might say, we want to launch, and the board says no. Or the board says we want to launch, and the minister says no. And all it is a representation of the ego. And that ego needs to be crucified, but I'm not saying literally, crucify your board, and do something gross. I'm saying the crucifying means ending. Done. We're done with this. But somebody has to speak up. So what if you're the one in your house in the old days that tried to speak up and ended up kind of, ridiculed for it? In those days we were bummed that it happened, but it's totally appropriate, meaning expected, meaning you're trying to shine a light in a place that people would rather you not shine lights. That dark place that people are like, we don't want you to wake us up. So in this transformation that's happening, frequencies and vibrations are changing. And I'm not going to go into this too far. I'll maybe save this for another time. But things are shifting so rapidly. But it means vibration and frequency. And I talked about this, I think, a day or two ago when I did this little introduction or announcement that we're going to have our service again today. But the frequencies are changing. And the electromagnetic field of the planet is changing. And as that's happening, our entire nervous system changes because we're in a symbiotic relationship with Earth. So if she's changing, we're changing. If we're changing, she's changing. The whole thing, the whole game is ramping up. And it does affect us. It affects our nervous system. What's our nervous system? Part of our neurology, which is also including our brain. And one reason a lot of people are noticing like memory issues is because you're getting old. No, I'm kidding. We don't want to ignore this so-called illusion, and the fact that, biology, but that's not what's happening in part. What's happening in part is our neurology is changing because we no longer have the electromagnetic field on this planet that used to buffer things and hold our memory together. It's all dispersing. So something's in and it's gone and I can't remember it yesterday to today and today to tomorrow because I don't have anything in me that holds it like it used to. God, I wish we can get our memory all back. Well, I understand that. But if you do, then you're also then going back and trying to lock in the old rules and laws of this world. So, how do we know that losing memory isn't one symptom of becoming in the moment? At the same time, how do I stay responsible? I have to pick my kids up on time today, but my memory is not, it gets very tricky. So that's when we know the truth, but we expect the illusion. And I've seen things like this. I've seen where I just finished writing a new book. That'll be out in a few weeks. But I'm sitting there with my famous two fingers trying to, plug out a book, And as I'm doing it, I'm noticing words are missing or a letter's missing. And I'm noticing that's not typical. But I'm watching it, and I don't panic about it, bless you. I don't panic about it. I just stop for a moment and recognize it's happening. And then it'll usually stop. Because as long as you don't try to avoid it or be afraid of it, if you can turn and look at it courageously, things shift. Your tension around it will shift. Therefore, I don't want to say it'll go back to it was. It won't. But what happens is you allow spirit to catch up and repair those pieces that started short-circuiting. So this process is not just one about external experiences and cool metaphysical experiences. It's not just about, I'm ramping up my vibrations, now I tingle more often. That's a symptom. It's beautiful. You might see auras more. You might notice short-circuiting and go, wow, and remember, you're not going crazy, you're just waking up. It's actually part of the awakening processes. You should be happy, you should be proud and excited and all that. But the phenomenon itself is not the goal. So when you recognize this is not the goal, this is just some of the special effects, then those special effects won't have some of the seemingly jarring or negative results or whatever, symptoms in your life. So you just turn and look at it and go, wow, what's happening? Oh, okay, I think it's short-circuiting a little bit. You see it, and then you'll notice it'll stop. And now how will it always stop and perfectly? Maybe not. Maybe you'll still notice there's still some Kundalini kind of things happening. Kundalini is not your goal. Kundalini is an effect of your awakening. I want all my chakras open. No, you don't. No, yeah, I want them all blasted open. I'm going to put jaws of life in every one of them, spiritual jaws of life, and just keep them all stuck open. Heart. Now I'm all heart chakra. You would last seconds. Blast all your chakras open. You would only last seconds. You'd have a total neurological burnout because of energetically what's happening. The chakras, the aura, these things open, and your gifts and your talents, they open naturally. The mystics of old used to say, you want to have cosmic experiences? Be a nice person. When you have love and an attitude of service, love and service, they used to say, the mystics, love and service will bring you all those special effects over time. When you try to have the special effects without being love and service, that's when you have the ill results of the Kundalini purging through your system. So everything in its time. And yet, time is running out. Time is speeding up. And again, can't get into it all at once, but the poles, are shifting already. They can measure that. They can see that scientifically. They know the Earth's wobbling a little bit. Where it used to be north and south, it's wobbling a little bit. Where it was here, it's no longer true north, is no longer true. And at some point, will it completely flip, which it has done before? Absolutely, it's going to flip again. And again, we can't get into all the details of that, but what I'm saying is, how can it flip and you not flip if you're in a symbiotic relationship with the planet? When it flips, you'll flip. And vice versa. Because we're in this shared experience. Right now, people are still seeing all of this as a separate thing. Some of us are waking up, some of us are not. That's because some people behave in a way that doesn't look like they're waking up. But they are waking up. Even when there's churches that I've advised, and they said no to making certain changes, I still planted the seed. And they're going to remember that next time they're in hell. Meaning the next challenges they go through and say, God, why do we have these challenges? One of them, at least one's going to go, didn't Michael talk to us about this before? And they're going to have their own version of awakening. So even the people in your lives and your families, you've tried to incite some changes or suggest some, AA groups and things to help people. You may not be the one that helps that complete flip, the pole shift for them. But you plant the seeds. And what's really challenging to remember is that we're on this planet, and when we're making change, when we're saying to people, or the earth itself, I'm really praying to see some changes for you. For the earth to be healed of this and that, imbalances that get caused, from our abuses to it, and to each other. And when we see people hurting, and we say, I've been praying for my child who's got this issue and that issue, or my parent or whatever, the prayers, when people refuse them, are not gone. They sit in the energy field of the person. They do. And then when that person has a moment of, Okay, you know what? They look around, make sure nobody's watching. I can't take it anymore. There must be another way. Boom! All these prayers come rushing in. They become a mystic and you're still praying for them. Because they got it now. They're like, Mom, man, isn't it amazing? And yeah, I was talking to Jesus yesterday and you're like, I've never seen Jesus, you know. And you're praying that they wake up, because we shouldn't get caught up in what we think we see. When you pray for somebody, you can't put, I'm praying for you and, hold on a second, I got to get the clip ready because my prayers come with attachments. I'm going to attach them to you. I need it to look like this, and I want you to wake up by June. You know, it can't, it just means I see you as perfectly in the love of God as I would see myself. I see myself as perfectly as I'd love to see you. You stay out of the personalizing of all of this, which, you know, it's not always easy. But things are, you know, getting to that place of transformation so fast. Somebody asked this morning, if things have changed the way they have, such negativity at times and karma on the planet, why can't we just uncreate it? If we're the ones who co-created it, why can't we uncreate it? There's a problem with that. And the good news is none of it ever even happened, but that's another story. In the meantime, why can't we just uncreate it? Because we're all invested in it without even realizing it. So for example, how do we uncreate it? So right now I'm in the mood to do some uncreating. I think I would like this place to become more lush, green. We live in the high desert. I would love it to be, for that to happen, I'm going to need to create some changes in the ecosystem. Well, what if somebody else is asking for the opposite? See, the changes can't be the way we think they're going to be. When we say, how do we uncreate it? You uncreate it mainly through love and forgiveness. Mainly through pulling your attachments out of the thing you created in the first place. So if you want to uncreate the world, and let's say you have a family member that's a real challenge to the family, uncreating it doesn't mean you mentally fix them and change them. You uncreate it by saying, like Ho'oponopono prayer, the Hawaiian prayer. You say something along the lines of, I see that you're reflecting things that I have somehow co-created and called you to be and manifest. I co-created you being the pain of this family. And that wasn't very nice. Please forgive me. I love you and I want to see you as who you really are instead of being my challenged child. Because I needed one of them. You know, I've got 5 kids, let's say. I need one of them to be a pain. To be my karma, to be this and to be that. And do all the things I did to my parents. Whatever, you know. And so one of them's like, I guess I'll do it. They're not raising their hand. Either that or your kids on the other side before they all came in. They heard you saying, I'm here, I'm going to have children. They're like, you in? Yeah, okay, you all in? Okay, there's 5 of us. Whichever one of us is going to be the thorn in mom, dad's side, step forward. And the other 4 went, you know, and then, uh-oh. So it could have happened that way, but either way, somebody took the assignment. And we're like, prayers of fix them, Lord, fix them, Lord, fix them. Which means I don't like really dealing with what they bring up in me. So it should be really, fix me, Lord, you know. I need some healing. I need to see this differently. And even in our prayers, we start deciding what that's going to look like. But what it really needs to be is I need to see this differently, meaning I'm willing to unplug how I think I see it and what I assigned it to be, and I'm willing to see it as God sees it. As unconditionally as possible to see it as God sees it. I want to be out of the way. I don't want to be, you know, sabotaging my ability to see what's really here. And what's really here is only ever love. That's all God ever can only be, is just pure love. So these things come into our life, and we reincarnate, not just people reincarnate, issues reincarnate. If I have issues with, let's say, abandonment, and I pass away without working on them, I'm coming back, and those issues will reincarnate with me because they're my beliefs. And we will reincarnate. I mean, reincarnation, we'll talk about that maybe some other day, but you can have a grandfather that you loved or one you were challenged with, and he can come back and become your own child if he's passed away before you had the child, or grandchild for that matter. It can be that specific and tricky, this whole reincarnation thing. But we don't want to judge it good or bad. What we want to understand is you can't run from yourself. Wherever you go, there you are. Your children are nothing but Literally all people are, and children even more so, are manifestations of my consciousness. They're not just manifestations of biology producing an offspring. All of my issues and good and bad traits, it's not just genetics, but also my unhealed wounds will manifest through those children. If I have deep, deep losses, then it's a possibility that I'll manifest those through that child or children. If I have deep love and I just love to share the love with the world, those children can reflect that love. What seeds are you planting literally and figuratively? Those are going to come back. All people mirror to us how we're doing inside, for good or ill. Man, I'm really feeling like I'm evolving, I'm growing in consciousness, and I look out here, and wow, I see a lot of really great people. So my having you folks in my life is an earned thing. I've had people say, well, Michael, it's probably easy for you to work on your stuff because you have a lot of really great people. Or, no, I had to earn this. This is not what I had as a child. So, as Buddha has taught us, what you see in your life is something you've earned. If you've had prosperity or good looks or whatever you've got, they're always earned. And then Buddha says, so use them to bring people closer to God. So, none of this is by chance. And if you're struggling in your life, recognize, okay, if the outside is a reflection of the inside, maybe I need to do some further work. Do that, but don't become a workaholic about your issues. Also start hanging around with better people to reflect that you're a happier person. And whatever the groups may be. If you're going to a 12-step group, if by chance it's really, really heavily focused on the hurts and the recovery aspect, I think it's great. But what if you say, and I also want to know the perks of recovery, the great, like, wow of it. Not just the work, but the wow. Then maybe it's step study, or maybe you get some folks from your study group, and you say, can we get together and talk about some other things now? How do we bring this to the world like we're being told to do? How do we do that without staying too stuck, with some people do in life? So looking at, if my life is feeling such and such, what do I do? If I'm not soaring, I'm either not healing something and it's got me stuck, or even if I did heal, sometimes I'm not planting new seeds for a new life. I'm like, well, I'm still here. I'm still doing all my work. And here's what you're doing. If all you're doing is work, and you're not, if this is the reason you're not seeing a new life, it's one of the two. It's either I haven't done some sufficient work, so weeds are choking out my new life, or I've done plenty of weeding, but now I keep weeding, never doing any new life preparation. So every time there's a new flower coming up, I've weeded it out. Because I'm still hoeing and raking the garden, the soil. And here comes a little life, boom, gone, because all I do is sit there and work on my stuff. There's a time for doing one, and there's a time for another. Remember the song, To Everything There Is a Season, which is from the Bible, of course. So, okay, so, yeah. On another note, where I started a bit ago, there's one thing that gets us into trouble, and it's this concept of spiritual bypassing. This is a phrase that became very popular with pop psychology and so forth. Spiritual bypassing isn't actually the best word for it. It's really more spiritual shortcuts. So what we have is a lot of spiritual bypassing, spiritual shortcuts. It's one reason the clinical world, the academic world, makes fun of the spiritual people, is because they're saying, these spiritual people, they think they can just chant their issues away, and they make fun of us, and they're half correct, at least generally speaking, half correct. In that, people eventually start getting on the spiritual path, and they think, because they now started reading A Course in Miracles, everything should start being peachy. I probably will never have to take vitamins again, because the Course in Miracles says, it's an illusion. And a day later, you're in surgery, because you have to deal with the guilt of having succumbed to the body looking like it has power over you. Because you have to face yourself. You have to face your false beliefs. So there's this whole spiritual bypass. Bypass means like a shortcut, sort of an easy way around something. Edgar Cayce, I remember saying when I read, like in 1982, first time I read him saying this, there are no shortcuts to spirituality. If you try shortcuts, what happens is you're less authentic. Okay, you're less authentic. You might know something, but you haven't experienced it. You haven't been it. You know, how much good would it be for some, let's say a 17-year-old girl to lecture older girls who have had babies on how to have babies and how to parent them? They would kind of look at that person like, you haven't even become an adult yourself, and you haven't even had children yet, and yet you're lecturing us about children. We've each got a few. It wouldn't make much sense. And that's a lot of what happens, and that's why sometimes we're disrespected by the world. So even though I'm saying, you know, spiritual bypass, I don't think that we should shame people if they have exhibited signs of spiritual bypassing. I don't think we should judge them or get on their case, but I think we should see it in case that's in ourselves. You know, the bypassing comes as basically in two forms. Why do we do spiritual bypassing? It's an attempt to avoid either doing spiritual work or to avoid the pain that comes from doing the emotional work. It's avoidance, though. That's what bypass means. So you're using spiritual avoidance, you know, and so whatever you know is not authentic. First time I went through the dark night of the soul, I remember I had studied, I had read, and I just felt totally awake. I mean, it felt fantastic. Yet going through the dark night of the soul anyway, which feels really strange, which is one good reason to go through the dark night of the soul. Because you feel so much like you've read, you understand, you meditate, you've got clarity and vision and guidance, you know, and run into psychics spontaneously who would say, wow, Michael, you're going to be doing such and such with your life. I'm like, great. So it was all, I'm ready to go. Now I'm going through the dark night of the soul. I'm like, how could that be happening? I really haven't done anything really cruel or yucky like some people, karmically, you know. And I've been spiritual and started off spirituality faster or sooner than other people. How could this be happening? And long story short, when I sat with this amazing shaman and he did a wonderful reading for me, in summary, the thing he said is, you learned too much too soon. And what that meant is, you absorbed so quickly, you hadn't had the time to integrate yet. And so he's saying the universe is doing to you what it needs to do to get you to catch up to all that you know. Had I not done it, I would have been attempting a spiritual bypass, a shortcut. I would have been a teacher who speaks from what I studied. And instead, I decided not to study after the dark night of the soul. Because I realized God and I are going to be pretty good here. I'm not saying I'm against studying or reading, because I'm not. Whatever flips your switch, I think, is just fine. But at the same time, I realized, wow. And at the time, it wasn't fun to hear that, by any means. Trust me, it was painful to hear that. Because I'm thinking, well, I'm reading A Course in Miracles, I'm studying this, I'm teaching that, I'm teaching about every topic, even back then, in my early 20s. It was just fantastic. But the dark night of the soul says, how many books you got? Oh, I got 10 books. Okay, we're going to light those on fire. Okay. What else you got? I got a couple certificates that say I've learned this healing art. Well, let's light those too. Now, what have you, anything else? You got anything else of importance? Or, well, I have kids. Well, we'll just have a divorce. Okay. Anything else? You know, and at some point you're like, no. I can't think of anything that's of any value. But the universe is like, well, we can. Because there's a deeper wisdom, so it finds things that you're trying to, and it just lights them all up. And now, the best you could do is learn to get your hands warmed from the bonfire that's going on. Because none of it's going to have any value. Any value. And that is heart-wrenching. To think, well, at least I've got my child. Well, your child's going to get older, and at some point, something's going to karmically create a rift because you weren't integrated. You weren't really loving them like you thought. You used compensation to extra love them because your parents didn't love you. That's not real. So that's going to have to be shown. Everything that is not real has to be shown. And we're going to try to avoid it by being extra close to this one. Make sure that doesn't happen. And those are the things that it'll find to light up for you. So that you have nothing left of personal pride, which is a good thing. It doesn't feel good. And it's not intentional to harm us. But these transformations happen so that the pole shift and the personal shift can just go, instead of, you know, in life, The pole shift can be without drama. If it meant literal flooding, we would know it's coming, like the Lemurians did, and they just moved to higher ground, and the floods and the seas rose, and their life and civilizations were submerged. And they started new life in the high lands, like the Polynesian Islands. And when the same metaphor is applied to emotions, when you know it's coming because you're a master, instead of being knocked over all the time, you know it's coming, you kind of prepare. If you know, whether it's an astrological chart or whether it's personal intuition, when you know these things are coming, it's kind of smart. You just kind of adapt. I mean, plants do that. You know, it's not like when definite winter is coming that a certain number of plants aren't going, wow, you know, let's really go full on into blooming and giving fruit. Contrary to nature. You know, one of man's big crimes is doing things contrary to nature. Right? On earth, would you agree? But that's just a mirror of how we went contrary to nature spiritually. Because if we knew the nature of who we are, we wouldn't be against the nature of anything, because it wouldn't make any sense. So we recognize who we are, and things start shifting, and we drop into a greater awareness. And the awareness is reflected inside, and then it's reflected outside. And then we don't fight it saying, why is the outside not matching? I'm perfect and holy inside. And we realize, well, maybe not. Maybe there are some pieces I missed. And that dark night of the soul comes and kind of brings them forward. And again, that's not fun, but it's going to happen. The spiritual bypassing, whether this applies to you or not, I have met many people full on into that spiritual bypassing. They include things like fake Buddhists. I know that sounds a little weird and contradictory, but I've seen people hiding behind Buddhism or any other religion for that matter. Right? Have you noticed it? If it's not real, if it's not integrated, then it's possibly just another one of those bypasses. And again, another word, shortcut. You know, if we try to be very cosmic, but it's a form of trying to dissociate from a world we don't like, then it's not authentic. I didn't become cosmic because I'm cosmic. I'm needing to be cosmic so I don't have to deal with the day-to-day life. Do you see the difference? And that's attempt at that bypassing again. I've seen fake celibates, you know. I've seen the people that call themselves tantrikas, who are just sex addicts. That's all bypass. It means I'm going to put on a facade of being something that I'm not. You know? And the masks have to go. You know, if that's not obvious, every human being wears a certain number of masks, but the masks have to go. We have people that are convenient vegetarians. You know, if you're in a yoga group and we're all like, oh, yeah, maybe we should organize some lunch after this week's yoga. Oh, I'll bring some hummus, whatever the hell you call it. Sorry. You know, and we'll spread that on non-flavored, non-tasty, non-wheat, crackerish kinds of things. And we'll do that. We'll like, where'd you get that? You know. But when you leave the yoga center, you're like, can we go to McD's or whatever, you know? The convenient, the convenient spirituality, the convenient vegetarianism. You know, the folks that justify every kind of an imaginable thing, and all it is a bypass. And I don't sit around looking at people going, you're a 35% bypasser. I don't sit around and scale people, rate people, judge people, because you know what? It happens to the best of us. So I just, whatever. But I don't buy it. You know, I don't buy what they're selling. If they're a fake vegetarian trying to tell me I should be a vegetarian, it makes no sense to me. And I'll just smile and say, wow, great. You know, and that's fine. But this world is a big mask. And all the inhabitants wear masks, pretending to be things we're not. What's nice is when you can really drop in and be that thing. You can be 5 and be authentic. It doesn't necessarily come with age. As long as you can, you know, be who you are. And there's 2 ways to be who you are. Be who you are, meaning the vulnerable human who I am. I have vulnerabilities, I have fears. And then there's the divine who you are. I will never find the divine who I am until I'm open to exposing all that I am not. All the masks that reveal who I'm not. So it's essential that I not get caught up and stuck in the who I'm not, another issue. I've got issues with that. I'm still working on that. I still got my, you can't obsess on it. But if it shows, be honest about it. And be honest that all those hundreds of things you think you have to deal with and talk about and heal, they're actually not hundreds. There's only a few core patterns we all have. Abandonment can take many forms. And if you chase it around and try to heal each little form, it's sort of a waste of time, partly a waste of time. Just get to the core of what's behind those several items. God, my abandonment leads to this. Anger. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm angry is what I am, and I drink to not be so angry, but I still am angry when I'm done. Great tune from the 60s, Kicks. Kicks just keep getting harder to find. The kicks ain't bringing you peace of mind. And you better find out before it's too late. It's amazing that a band was singing about the illusion of what we use to stimulate and sedate as a means of avoidance. And again, it's just, forgive them, they know not what they do. If somebody's doing bypass, they're not evil people, but they're scared people. And again, they're either avoiding the process that'll happen. If you take away my addiction, stuff's going to come up, obviously, but not so obvious to some people. But that's what's going to happen. Take away my distraction, and other things are going to happen. Take away my food. You can say, I only eat a little bit, a couple times a day, and that's amazing. What's amazing, though, more so, is when you even take that away, just for hours, and you start noticing, these irritations and chewing your nails, because something shifted. You might even have an addiction even to light eating. And I'm not saying don't eat at all. What I'm saying is just notice it. And some addictions are nicer than others. If I had to have a partner with an addiction, and it would either be full-blown crack addict or addicted to reading the Bible, I guess I'd prefer somebody that just is addicted to reading the Bible. I just don't want him to tell me about it all the time. I'm addicted to peace and quiet, No. Sorry. So we can become religious as an addiction, because without this, I'm in trouble. If I don't have my book, whatever the holy book is, if I don't have my book, then God's going to be down on me about something. God's going to judge me. There are people that think that wearing the cross is their, I wear this cross and it makes me close to Jesus. And Jesus is like, really? I'm actually in your mind. No, you're not. You're on this cross that I wear. Heaven help me if I lose the cross, So these are all addictions, and I'm saying we don't need to get caught up in it, guys. It's forgive them, they know not what they do. That's all. Those forms of masks, those are desperations. The spiritual bypassing is not an accident. But it's either I'm afraid of what else I would have to deal with if I did real work, or I need to pretend I'm more spiritual or further along than I am. And those are the people that, and there's lots of ways that people get to that. I'm not criticizing a single one of them, but it's an example of I've seen people say, I'm so spiritual, I'm just going to go with spirit today, I didn't show up for my appointment because I wasn't feeling guided. Let's say you're a massage therapist, and they didn't show up because it's funny, because spirit just wasn't speaking to them about going. And you say, that's great. Did spirit tell you I'm going to charge you for a missed appointment? And they get mad at you. Now, where's spirit? I thought this was all about you being so spiritual that you are guided. If you're really guided, you'll also be practical. You won't use irresponsibility. You won't make excuses for irresponsibility. You'll be there. I've seen people that, because it suits them, I'm a shaman. Wow, that's pretty cool. Where did you train? Oh, in a neighbor's garage for about 4 hours. We did this ceremony, and now I'm a shaman because I studied for 4 hours. The real tradition would never buy that. You can't be an overnight druid. You can't be a this and you have to be real about anything you're doing, or why bother doing it? There's people that just lack the training in any one thing, and I'm not saying that the certifications make you something. But how much are you really into it? I've shared the example of, as a kid, I studied martial arts. And I went up the ranks and wanted to get to, the ultimate, we're going to get up there. And I got up there. And then I got up the next high, and the higher of the highest and all that. And before, when they go to hand me my certification of being the highest level you can get in the martial art of Kung Fu, I said, okay, give me the certificate. And, I said, I want you to change the title, because the title was Master. And I said, we're going to change. And they're like, what do you mean? It seemed disrespectful. But what I did is I changed it from Master and downgraded it to just degrees of teacher, whatever you want to call it. Black belt, they call it. But so what I did is I didn't take the other. Why? Because it wasn't me. I had lost interest in it long before I reached that level. And it's not in integrity, and it's not authentic to say I'm a master at something I don't even care about. Don't call yourself married when you're not in consciousness married. You're not. Oh, yes, we are. We have a certificate, but be honest. It's just not happening. If you're not if you're not dedicated to the martial art, don't call yourself a master of that. You see what I'm saying? It's the authenticity. And so we have to have the courage to say, well, because that could screw everything up. I could have that level. Why did I study all those years to achieve it? That's the head talking, and I'm not interested. If it's not me, then it's not me. If the mystics would say to you, do you want to say you're spiritual? I am spiritual. How do you know? Well, because I've read 3 books now, or whatever you think makes you spiritual. If you're not any more loving, and if you're not any more of service to others, meaning humility, then you're not spiritual. How dare you? Well, it's not. You're not going to get anywhere trying to convince me otherwise. If we're really spiritual, we should be seeing a difference in us. I've seen people who claim to be spiritual and they put on workshops and all they care about is the money. I've seen people in Sedona just cashing in. Now, I'm not shaming prosperity. I'm just saying, wow, you can just see where the heart is. Why they're even doing these things. Some people are doing it to make a living rather than the difference it can make in people's lives. If you take care of the people, you're going to be taken care of. You don't have to say, I'm doing this and I have to figure out a way to make more money doing what I'm doing. Man, we forget that when we drop into being, all the other takes care of it. It takes care of itself. So we can be prosperous and so on, but it's just to become greater, centered in the authenticity of who we are. I've seen people advertise things, and if it's you, please forgive me. I've seen people advertise things like, in just one session, we will clear all of your past life karma. That's amazing. That's amazing, even though we have no evidence. I think it's amazing because if you can clear all my past, then that means I have none. Then that would mean within seconds of our session, I should be ascending or getting a refund, right? You don't mind if I ask for a refund if I don't ascend. Oh, we don't give refunds. Really? Then stop promising people things. Stop promising quick fixes. I believe in miracles, don't get me wrong. But do you actually know this can happen? Or is it just a good way to hook in more clients? I see these people promising all kinds of healing. That's just incredible. Clear all your past lives. All I need to do is, burn a smudge stick and you're good to go. And it's like, geez, then light me a bonfire of smudge and let's just go. I see people using spiritual bypass, making excuses for things. My child is not out of control. They're just an indigo. Bring it on, parents. Go ahead. Throw it at me, whatever. But is it true? Because it could be true, but we jump to excuses. Always the excuses to excuse our masks instead of recognizing, that maybe your child is out of control and maybe that's why some other people have a hard time with your child. No, it can't be. And then what you're doing is you're hiding behind your child your own issues that you don't want to look at. So you have to now hide behind this praising the child, because if you praise the child, you feel better. People don't know how to recognize their own issues when they're hidden behind so many other things. I could give you a dozen great symptoms of spiritual bypass. But just try to tune in any of them that I'm describing and see if it applies to you. And then you can cure it in seconds. For just 99, no. You can cure it in seconds because we can recognize authentically, not fixes, quick fixes. We can say, oh my God. And it can be scary. It can be scary, you know. I did a few workshops when I was a kid. I had some certificates. And it's intimidating, the idea. I thought, why do I even have these papers? So a couple certificates that I took this class and that graduated and, you know, or got certified. Why do I have these? Well, when I was a kid, I believed that that's what gave me some credibility. But I learned soon after, it really doesn't matter. If you know who you are and what you're teaching, it really doesn't matter because there's people with certificates that know nothing and without them that know everything. Such as Buddha, Jesus, just a couple names, you know. I mean, what the heck? Mother Mary and so on. They didn't have credentials. Jesus was called master and rabbi, but he never actually studied and had a certificate. Because it's the wisdom of God that speaks into us and awakens anything we need to know at any given time. Go ahead and do the studies, but do them with God. Go ahead and study Reiki instead of just saying, well, I'm going to just ask God to download Reiki to me today, which you can do. Go ahead and study it as well, so that you have the certificate, so you can have some, you know, credibility to people you can train. I think it's great. But did you also get it inside? Are you a Reiki master? Oh yeah, I took it. No, it's not what I asked. Is it real? Are you in recovery? Oh yeah, I go to the groups every week. Okay, so are you recovering? Are you wishing you could recover? Are you recovered? Where are you in that? And make it real. The people that say, I'm really, you know, I'm recovered, I'm healthy and whatever. But again, they're chomping at their fingernails and still anxious. We're not there yet, but what's beautiful is I'm on my way. I'm getting it. You see? But all of this, man, all the certificates, it's scary. And one day I came to Unity of Sedona, and they had asked me, you know, do you have certification? Do you know anything? You know, where they wanted to know all that so that they could believe. I'm talking about the board members and such, but maybe some of the attendees. They wanted to know if I had any credibility on paper. So what I did one service is I took them all my certificates, I brought them from home and I shredded them in the paper shredder during the service. And it's what you do is, okay, now am I okay? If I drop the masks, they may not, but they might. They may be like you and not care, but just go ahead and try it. And you have to push through that moment to say, I'm really, really happy all the time. But yet it's a mask I learned to wear because in my family, let's pretend that there was no happiness. So I wear it. I'm always happy. What if, and then you guys love that I'm always happy. What if I remove the mask and let you know that today I'm struggling? You guys might not like me. And that's the courage that it takes. Dropping the masks. You might not like me. You're a wonderful lover. I really enjoy our relationship because we really spark it together, man. And we both passionate and wow, we're just amazing. What happens when one of those two says, to tell you the truth, I don't feel a whole lot when we're together. My body is shut down when I was younger. And all that is just kind of the passion of wishing that I could feel what you feel. Oh, man. Some people would drop that person, wouldn't they? And you're being challenged to go to the next level. When that person says, I'm going to show more of myself. And if everybody on the planet could simultaneously say, let's all expose ourselves. No. Let's all, well, that's what that meant. In classic true Tantra, that's what disrobing meant. It didn't mean drop the clothes. It meant, can you be fully vulnerable and expose your being? And, you know, in the Western world, they said, well, all that being stuff, exposing, let's just drop the clothes. But in true Tantra, it meant, can you love me when I show myself? Yes, physically, but also, can you love me when you know I'm getting older? Can you love me when you know my memories fail? Can you love me when you know I don't have the money I was hoping I would have at retirement? You know, whatever it is. Can you love me if I, as your teacher, struggle at times? Can you love me if I, as your student, don't always have faith? You know, that's the good stuff. And if everybody on the planet could simultaneously say, this is going to be risky, Everybody ready? On 3, and 1, 2, and we just go boom, 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 and we blurt it out. You know, we just blurt it out. What is your deepest fear? If I asked 10 of you to stand up and share your absolute deepest fear, could you do it? Some of you could, some of you couldn't. And on the internet and with each other. And so here's what I do. Just get partway there. Just go partway. Just think of, concentrate. Worst thing that you could ever imagine doing and having, you know, in fears and issues. What about your biggest shames and guilts? Go ahead and tell them to us. Well, you know, no way, you know, this reason and that reason. Here's what you can do as an exercise. You can just concentrate on what it is. I never wanted to tell anyone. And then, this is wrong. And you blurt it with your hands over your mouth and nobody will know, but you still did it. And if you do that a couple of times, which I've done in workshops, everybody is now saying it. You do it a couple of times and you're going to find it's easier each time. Because at the end of the day, nobody that matters will have an issue of any kind with anything you've ever done or thought or said. I said nobody that matters. The ego in all people will matter to your ego. If all of a sudden, you know, a few friends kind of part ways, oh, you know, you could feel hurt. But the real part of them, it's their ego that's controlling them. How much do you want to stay stuck with that? The real them cannot. And that's what healers are supposed to represent to us. Healers are supposed to represent that surrogate. Like they're supposed to play the role of, if I'm the presence of God, you can tell me anything and I promise to still see the light in you. It's okay. That's what they're supposed to do. It's not supposed to just be cash in on a session, you know, and pay and go. It's not supposed to be where they hear something and then they tell somebody else. You know, listen, I don't want to say anything, but as long as we keep it between us, I don't mind saying it. But did you know so-and-so, da-da-da-da-da? And it's never going to be kept between us because as soon as you broke the vow, it's now going to keep leaking because that's what you just created, is an irreverence, right? An incongruence to love. So now that's going to be what you've bred into the world. So instead, how do we hold the presence for each other? And it is beyond what your ultimate archetype of a mother or father would be. It's really to do your best to be the divine mother and hold every child of God in grace and in peace when they share even the darkest stuff, their biggest fears. Do you feel that? It's fantastic. And you drop in and hold that presence. I find it to be just startling, just amazing when people share those kinds of things. There are times when, you know, I hear things and I go, wow, you know, it's hard to hear some things because people have done heavy harms and have been heavily harmed. It's mind-boggling. There's even a passage most people still have not come across in the diary notes of Helen, who wrote A Course in Miracles. And I remember she's talking to Jesus, and she brings up the Holocaust. And the response was, I have shed many tears over that. And you think, well, if you're spiritual, you're beyond all that. It's a metaphor, meaning atrocities are not wonderful. Hurtful behaviors are not, you don't just say, well, it's an illusion. That's spiritual bypass. Oh my God, A Course in Miracles students can be experts at spiritual bypass. Well, it's an illusion. What do you mean it's an illusion? It's an illusion. You shouldn't have been wanting a cigarette anyway because it's just an illusion. Really? Are you going to use your car to get home tonight? It's an illusion. Why would you use it? See, it's just lies. It's hypocrisy, and we hide because it makes us look like we know something more. You can know something in two ways. You can really know it or not know it. When you really know it, you don't preach it. You embody it. You can still reflect it, but it's never in a, you know, this kind of a fashion. Wronging and shaming people. It's, wow, look at this option. And then they can step into it or not. So in closing, we've gone a lot of places today. Frequencies and changes and spiritual bypass. The world is changing. Frequencies are changing. Time is changing. Our consciousness is changing. But are you part of the authentic change, or are you part of the bypass change, the fake change, the shortcuts? I'm really spiritual. I've seen people at workshops or avoid workshops. They'd have to do with emotional work. Well, I don't really have any issues. I've heard it many times. More in this town than anywhere else I've ever been. But I'm past that. I don't really have any issues. Well, then you won't mind doing the breath work, right? Because nothing will come up. We'll see. And it's such an amazing thing to drop in. And I can do that. I can sit here right now. I feel just full of the Spirit. I don't feel a bunch of triggers and masks right now. But I can sit and I can just drop in. In this moment, I can sit and drop in and just become present, and could still find myself feeling tears welling up. Maybe in memory of mine, but it could be a global issue, an event. Something I've seen or heard, right? Because when I drop in, whatever happens to be percolating or surrounding in the energy field in memory can come up. And remember, we talked about this last week. Things come up on their way out. If I judge it and say, I'm a teacher, I shouldn't think that or feel that. I'm not as real, I'm not authentic. But people will judge us the opposite sometimes. If this teacher goes, God, I got some hurts I remember about something, there are people that go, oh, I thought they were spiritual, but they still have some issues. That's not how you judge the spirituality. If anything, it would be how you handle it when it's there. Not that you don't have them. It's that if it's there, we let it come up and move out. Hopefully appropriately. If you're spending time to be here and spending money to be here, if I just go off on rampages about my personal life all the time, it becomes inappropriate. But can I authentically just allow those things to move through? And be able to look at them and, if I shed a tear, just to wipe it and keep going, and say, okay, and here we are, because we're in this together. Having that level of authenticity, you guys know, because you've seen it in me or other people in your life, friends and otherwise, when people have been authentic, do you mostly judge them for it, or do you mostly appreciate it? Yeah, we do. We appreciate it. When someone comes to me and says, Michael, I've never told anybody, but boom, whatever it is, I only have ever felt appreciation because of who they are, what they've gone through, but also that they trusted me enough to tell them. How could I ever take that for granted? And I would never do the spiritual bypass and say, well, it's an illusion, get over it. That's ridiculous. So what are we doing, guys? We're rising to new levels. The poles will shift. This pole will shift. And when it does, do I really need earthquakes and floods? Or can I just make a graceful shift? How to make the graceful shift? Don't judge what comes up. Let it just move. And then trust in the next. Trust in tomorrow. There's a death today, a rebirth tomorrow. There's a loss today and a rebirth tomorrow. Trust in the new life. But also trust in your ability to handle the old life that washes through sometimes. You do have all that you need to handle these things. But you don't hear me talking just positive, 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 like some people and not say. The emperor is naked sometimes. When people have abused their teaching and pretended that they were more spiritual than they were, the overnight shaman and all this and that and the other, it's just games. It's not authentic. It's just games. Stay close to God and let God guide you to the real and authentic teachers and psychics. You can still do these things, but stick to the real. Even who you date, let God guide you to authentic and real as much as possible. Let's take a few centering breaths, please. Tune out all the stuff of the world. We've had plenty of time to think about all the stuff of the world. We've done it for lifetimes. When we want to center back in, how quickly can we do that? It's just in a breath or two. Just right to I am on the inhale, at peace on the exhale. Think of nothing else. And come to this awareness and listening. No more bypassing, no more shortcuts, no more games. All of that. The avoidance of the deeper human stuff and the pretend, the spiritual. Done. Not only am I done doing it, I'm done attracting it. Pseudo partners that say, well, hey, I'm spiritual, I study a lot. And it's not real. It's the ego's way of trying to turn us off to what is real. Let's not do it. Let's not buy it. Stay committed to the real. Hear these words and see how it fits. Don't pretend it fits to be cosmic. Try to really feel this. I am the love of God. Drop into it. See if there's any resistance, any doubt, any fear, or complete welcoming of it. And hear it half a dozen times with each breath. In breath, I am the love of God. And on your out breaths, whatever came up that was not congruent with believing that, breathe it out. Give it to God. It's not true on the exhale. Not true if it's something coming up. And then I am the peace of God. You can have thoughts like, I don't feel peaceful. Affirm it anyway and give to God what doesn't feel peaceful. What does it mean to be the peace of God? I am the peace of God. I am the joy of God. You've heard of and seen proud parents that are just really happy, and they say, our baby is our bundle of joy. Can you imagine God saying that about you? I am the bundle of joy of God. I am the joy of God. I don't just feel the joy. I am actually an embodiment of the joy of God. And see how that feels. Even if the incongruencies come up, feel them, breathe them out. And I am the abundance of God. Do I act like it? Do I live? Do I trust? Do I tithe? Do I share? I am the trust of God, the love of God, the joy of God, but I am the abundance of God. I'm the prosperity of God. Breathing out all things that are unlike that affirmation. I can see my hypocrisies. I can see my fears, tensions, discomforts around these statements. I breathe them out to God, and again, with each one of these moments, I feel transformed. I believe and trust that I'm being transformed. My brain is being rewired so that I am more fully the love of God, the peace of God, the joy of God, the abundance of God. How would I act differently in this world if it's true that I am these things? How would I act differently? See yourself doing that. And then, when we leave here, let's do our best to do it, to make the outer actions match the inner affirmations. Then we know we're in complete alignment instead of incongruent, inconsistent. And we give thanks in advance for all we breathed out and what we breathed in, the presence of God. What I'm affirming is not what I'm hoping for, it's what God created me to be. So all I need to do is get out of the way. Get rid of those thoughts and behaviors that are incongruent so that I can be the embodiment of this. I'm grateful that this is happening now. I truly believe it's already there, and it's just about me stepping into the alignment of that. I give thanks that I am already moving in that direction, already stepping into that alignment. I give thanks that immediately the miracles of having such a consciousness comes to me now. That this is who I am. There's no masks to this. There's no bypassing to this. It's true, it's real, and so it is. Thank you. Take a moment and stretch. Okay? Don't just stretch out, stretch in. anchor what you heard that you liked. Anything you didn't like, let it go. But if you heard anything that made sense, just kind of feel like it's there. You feel it, the presence of it. Before we take up collection and do our closing song, which will only be a couple minutes from now, I'm going to share the song lyrics from you I brought a week ago and didn't have a chance. You'll know the song. Most everybody here and most anybody watching will know the song. It was quite popular. But I want to share the words with you because of what it says. You might remember the tune because it starts with pressure, pushing down on me, pressing down on you. No man asks for. Under pressure that burns buildings down and splits families in two. It puts people on the streets. It's the terror of knowing what this world is about. Watching my good friends scream, let me out. Tomorrow gets me higher. Pressure on people, people on the streets. Chipping around, kicking my mind around the floor. These are the days. It never rains, but it pours. People on the streets, people on the streets. It's the terror knowing what this world is about. Watching all the friends scream, let me out. Tomorrow gets me higher and higher and higher. Pressure on people. There's people on the streets, and he says, I tried to turn away from it all like a blind man. I even tried sitting on the fence, but it doesn't work. It keeps coming back to love, but it's so slashed and torn. Why? Why? The answer, insanity laughs. Under pressure, we're cracking. Why can't we give ourselves one more chance? Why can't we give love that one more chance? Why can't we give love, give love, give love, give love? The answer, because love's such an old-fashioned word. And love dares you to care for the people on the edge of the night. And love dares you to change your way of caring about ourselves. This is ourselves. This is ourselves. This is ourselves under pressure. And this is our last chance, it says. This is our last dance. It's ourselves under pressure. A song about the metaphor of life and people under pressure, losing families, losing their livelihoods, living on the streets. What is this all about? What happened? We forgot love. Why? Because love's become an old-fashioned word, and love dares you, it challenges you to think bigger and care for the people on the edge of the night. And, like I said, and love dares you to change your way of caring about everyone, and it's not just everyone, because everyone is ourselves. And it ends under pressure. Amazing, yeah? Don't know if you knew the lyrics of that when you were in the discos. But I love inspired tunes, and I love the lyrics of that. It's the type of song we could play here for our songs, but it's just not congruent enough musically, beat-wise and style-wise, but it still has a great message. So I'm glad I could share that with you guys. On my private Facebook page, there's a lot of folks that have shared former songs and inspired readings and all that. A couple of great tunes, lyrics from ELO, Electric Light Orchestra, and so on. So it's just some fantastic things, guys, in this world. Feed the soul. Listen to tunes that have those words that inspire. I mean, that's powerful stuff. That's as good as anything I've heard anywhere. I don't care who the teacher is, Jesus, Mother Mary, whomever. It still has the same feeling. What's going on? Why have you forgotten love? And then the message, because love dares you to come out and become one with everyone, care about, recognize. And then when you're caring about everyone, it's really ourselves under pressure. That's big stuff. I love how Spirit speaks to all of us. Of Course in Miracles affirmation, God speaks to me all through the day. And it's true. We're going to do our collection and our closing song. Be as generous as you can. That's all we ask. The blue bags are for your love offerings and donations. The wicker baskets for any extra donations you can give. And those go towards people of lesser means and some of our special projects. One project that's coming up, because it's getting to be that time of year, is we're going to create a garden down there next to the children's yurt. So your extra donations are going to start going towards that in part. Love to see that, especially since people told us it can't be done. Yeah. Everything we've done here, we were told can't be done. And we don't do it to spite it. We do it because we are what we are, so fantastic. We'll do our prosperity prayer. If you don't know the words, it's on the front of your bulletins, and or sometimes it's printed for the folks online to read. Believe in the words. Divine love flowing through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And so it is. And we're going to ask folks to tune into what you learned today, and then we'll share that with each other and with the folks watching. What did you hear and learn that was most important today? And I want to just share this real quick. When you read online what people are experiencing, you can just go, wow, it's great. People, hi, love you, great service or whatever. To try to imagine if you're up here and or feeling like you're part of the members and the board of Unity. Imagine what it feels to be here. And people are texting us or messaging us on posts, and so forth. And they're saying things like, I've never felt like this before. I never heard this. I never experienced this. You follow? It's not about the accolades. Do you understand what it feels like to be in a position where people are feeling something shift in their being? You follow? And it's not just like a healing session. It's an experience that we have here, guys. I'm so grateful to everybody. And never do I take it for granted and think, wow, people like us, people like me. It doesn't feel like that at all. It's like, wow. It's awe-inspiring in a good, humble way to know all of us in this room and this group, that we make such a difference in people's lives. And to hear people say, heartfelt say, this is life-changing for me. There was one person that sent in a message just a day or so ago and said that they're actually part of a coven. Their practice is pagan witchcraft, and they're part of a coven. They said, Michael, I want to just say something, and thank you for sending that in. They said, I want to say something, and that is, we have our practices, but even in our groups, we're starting to see the cracks. That what you're teaching back to God has something to it. Everybody found a different niche, and it doesn't mean those are wrong or bad. It just means people, no matter what they're into, are starting to say, sometimes the external versions of those things start losing the original spirit. Because God is behind every one of those thought systems, every one of ours. But we forgot that it's the source of it all. We started sometimes worshiping the details of it, even worshiping diets and exercise and things, as well as religious names. God, and then God in all those things. And we have to remember the humility and the surrender to that. So I'm really honored when somebody can say something like that, so deep about a tradition they're involved in, so vulnerable, knowing that they're not exactly patted on the back by other people in those traditions. They look like renegades and they look like failures. And I just say, I love you as the pagan, as the witch, as the druid, I think it's all great, especially because they're being so true. And it's an amazing honor to kind of be somehow a piece of that, and having dropped a presence there. If I die tomorrow, God and I are good. I wouldn't die with any wish I could have. It's like, wow. I stood in that light and did the best I could to even in dark places, to shine that light, but stood in that column of presence and said, remember God. Why do you have issues with the name God? Why do you have issues with this and that? Let's look at it. Let's talk honestly, and let's let it go so we can rise and do a new level of consciousness. So thank you for that. Anybody want to share what they heard or learned today that would be most important? Just one or two people. Yes?
Thank you for the powerful lyrics and discussion about authenticity, but I do have an important question based on the kind of work that I do. In the beginning, you were talking about approaching a church, and of course, a church has a culture, heady kind of a
Yes.
term, and maybe it's a culture of collective illusion.
Yeah.
All right, and you say to them, maybe these three things need to happen in the next couple of months. But when you work with culture and that collective illusion, it takes time and discovery, spirit. It's not something that can happen quickly. So I'm trying to put the front end of what you said.
Yeah. It's a good point. If any of us drop a hint to she says, whether it's a church or it could be a family, anything that has an ism, a thing, it becomes like a culture in itself. If I say, here's what you guys can do to change that, the problem is there's a culture, or it's called a paradigm or a thought system. All we can do is drop the hints. I mean, this was a thought system and a paradigm. Everything on earth is a paradigm of some kind, but this was, and I came here, and I still, how did we do that? Almost instantly. Start making dramatic, energetic changes.
So it can happen.
It can happen. I've done it. I have done it. I mean, yeah. And when you're not welcomed with those hints, guys, when you're not in your partnership, in your family, in wherever, never judge them. Never judge them. But be willing to say, I'm going to just shake the dust off my feet and move on. I'm just going to do my work and move on. And it's okay. Now, some of us go, well, I'm willing to do that with strangers, like if I were visiting a church, but not in my home, my family. Oh my gosh, I could never imagine being without my dysfunctional family. You know, you have to be willing to say, but wait, you know, this doesn't feel right. So, what do you guys think about this? And I don't care what they say, because culture is an illusion. Paradigms are only structures of illusion. So, call yourselves, be authentic. Call yourselves the church of collective illusions. And own that that's what you are. But don't say that you are a church of Christ consciousness when in fact you've never welcomed Christ in to that church. Because Christ would never say, structure and culture. Structure, let's praise and affirm. Structure and culture, let's chant it. Structure, culture, it just doesn't happen that way. All of that breaks up and dissipates. Yeah. In the back, yes?
You said time speeding up, linear time speeding up.
Time is speeding up, yeah.
We talked about a lot of time in one short time, because another Sunday you said that by coming here, you were told you could live 500 lifetimes of suffering in one and alleviate that.
Yeah.
Are they correlated?
Yes, because everything's speeding up, and that means even our former lifetimes could be lived, multiple lifetimes could be lived in one. We used to just it's a way amazing. We used to drag our past lives with us. You know, I'm going to work on that one or two. And then time starts speeding up, over, you know, years ago, even hundreds of years ago for that matter. It started speeding up to the point where we're living several, a dozen in one lifetime, and now it could be 100. Because it's all speeding up. It's what used to be only this big wheel, and we were sluggishly moving through, and the whole, you know, this whole delusion happens. And it's very complex, but also very simple. This simple is, we believe we separated from God. The progression is, we were one with God. We were created by God. We then thought we could separate, created the ego to cover our tracks. God said, since you're trying to create an ego, I'm going to let the Divine Mother be the counter through your ego. Call on her and she'll heal all of your beliefs in separation. The ego then said, I have a counter to that. I'm going to create people. And you'll always be thinking about people, the ones you like and the ones you don't like, but you'll never think about you. Because if you go inside you, you're going to find God. We can't have that. So the ego says, I'm going to counter your idea to bring the Holy Mother, the Holy Feminine, Divine Feminine, into your being where you'll find grace and forgiveness. Nope, I'm going to create people. So all of a sudden we projected people outside of ourselves to like and not like, but we're still talking about them. Even if we like them. I'm so spiritual, I like people. That's dysfunctional too. There are no people, there's just you. So God says, okay, if you're going to do this and use your ego to project all your issues out onto people and then talk about them instead of yourself, I'm going to create a solution to that as well. Instead of relationships, I'm going to create holy relationships. And it's all this. It all means this. If you can forgive everybody you think you like and everybody you think you don't like, that one act, forgiveness, which will still be the Divine Mother working in us, will take you home. So we have this very complex system, lifetimes and karma and cosmic speed up. When it's all done, we will realize, it was funny, in one split second, everything happened or didn't. One split second we said, what would it be like to be separate? Oh, that was good. Glad we didn't do that. But we created time to make it seem like it's billions of years. Oh, you know, incarnating again. Oh, I got some karma. I got come back and I'll see you next time. I'd rather not, but that means I got to come back. And, you know, now I've got 5 people I don't like coming. Now they're all my family members because I have a collection of them. Now we call it family. All my issues have become my family, you know, and on and on. And it looks complex. And then, oh, I'm getting spiritual now. Now I'm starting to breath work, the family members. I hate your mom, I hate your dad. Controlling. Oh, get away from me, dad. Oh, process. And we don't look mentally ill at all. You know, process. You know, beat on the pillow. All these techniques. You know, process. I need some water to flush out as though you can. Memories of your past. You know, water, there they all go. Next time I urinate, all my issues are gone. It seems very complex. And in the illusion, it's true. But at the end of the day, we'll realize, why were you washing, flushing? Why were you drinking? Why were you processing? Why were you breath working? Why were you talking about mom and counseling and crying and pain and abused? When at the end of the day, I need to forgive it all. I need to forgive the belief that I ever even could have imagined any of this taking place. Because we only see what we can imagine. I need to forgive myself. That anyone or anything, including me, could be anything less than holy. And as that happens, people walk up to you figuratively. They walk up and say, thank you for retiring me from being your abuser. Thank you for retiring me from being the bad guy, the culture, the limited this, the limited that. See, we forgive the world and it disappears. First, what happens is it changes by the world not being so harsh, and then it starts to look a little nicer. Then we notice what's happening really is our investments are dropping. Our investments in a dysfunctional world are dropping. And that's a beautiful thing, because that means I'm changing. We're looking for and praying for everybody else to change, but we realize at the end of the day, I'm changing, and that's really what counts. I just feel good. I just feel alive. I just feel holiness within my being. And the world will not always support that. I said when I came here, actually, and I repeated a few years ago, maybe two, I said, guys, I'm feeling like, because with everything it cycles, and I said, you guys, I think it feels like we're ready to launch to yet another level. You know, for a while, I did lots of different topics, and so that we can get them on DVD so people can have them. Now we did the sets of DVDs, and I can now go anywhere I want, any topic that's what's coming up for you all, and so that allowed another level of freedom. And then in that freedom, we can say, well, if we have freedom to talk about any topic, we also more so are allowed to bring in the presence of Christ consciousness for that process to happen even more. So we all launch to another level, and people are watching it online going, wow, that's amazing. This isn't just something we're doing, it's something we've achieved in consciousness. We worked together to make this happen. If you want to change your family, it can be a process. You might have to purge away some things. You might have to do some inner work and healing. We did that viscerally here, and that's how we got to this level of consciousness. It was always great since I got here. It's always felt great. The audience, the subject matters, it's always felt great. But still rising to higher and higher levels because of doing the authentic work with one another, right?
Yes.
Right, Susan? Yeah. We're in this together, all right? And if you're in that family, do what you can. Say what you can, do what you can, be the presence. But if your presence becomes more harm than good for them because of their egos, shake the dust off and move. But to thine own divine self be true. A last hand or two? Anybody else? All right, guys, thank you for your feedback. And I know a couple other people raised hands, but thank you, guys. Peace be with you. We're going to do our closing song. And peace be with all of you. Thank you for tuning in. God bless you all, and hope you stay connected with us. You're welcome.